I just read this the other day, and it really blew my mind. The average age of a first-time home buyer last year was 38 years old. So I'd say the challenging part is switching out all the hats and making sure that you wear each one well. At the same time, that's what makes it exciting. It's definitely not a stagnant job. And right now, Bucks County, especially lower Bucks County, like where we're at, so I track the school districts like Council Rock, Pennsbury, Neshaminy, Central Bucks, New Oaks, Oldbury. Just today, this morning, there's about 1 month's worth of inventory in that pretty large area. So we would need 6 times the amount of homes on the market to balance that, to give people equal power.
Which is going to be more about people my age, late 20s, early 30s, looking to buy their first home. So what advice would you have, Dale, for people that are trying to buy their first home?
What advice would you have for people who are looking to invest in the real estate market?
Welcome to the GWH Steps to Success podcast. This is the podcast where I uncover the secrets to achieving financial freedom and success. Join me, Chris Cece, along with my co-host, Mike Cece, from GWH Wealth Advisors, as we guide you through the complex world of wealth management, retirement, and tax planning. At GWH Wealth Advisors, we believe that everyone deserves the tools and knowledge to shape their financial future. Now here we are, your hosts, Chris and Mike Cece.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a registered brokerage dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and GWH Wealth Advisors, LLP, are not affiliated.
Welcome, everyone, to the 4th edition of the GWH Steps to Success podcast. I am your host, Chris Cece. I'm here along with my co-hosts, Riley Masterson and Mike Cece from GWH Advisors and Accountants. And we are excited. We have a very special guest today. Dale Cosack with BHHS Real Estate in Newtown is here with us today to talk about the real estate market. So we'll jump right into it. Dale, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what inspired you to get into real estate and what keeps you passionate about it?
Okay, it's a good question. So my mom started in the business in about 1990. So I was somewhere around 10-ish years old and kind of just got used to going to the office with her, helping her with mailing. I used to walk the neighborhoods, popping flyers and stuff like that. And my last year of college, had my son was on the way. So it was kind of a stressful time. And I was taking my real estate classes at Temple and, asked my mom, could you show me if this might work for me in the future? And she said, well, why don't you come in for a couple hours, a couple days a week? You can only do the background paperwork, any of that type of stuff. You can't really speak real estate at that point in time because I wasn't quite licensed yet. So I spent a year doing that. And 2 weeks after I graduated and my son was born, I hit the ground running, got my license, and that was 19 years ago. So I guess, to be honest, was part of it. Needed to figure out a career coming out of college. It's something I'd been exposed to and quickly figured out it was something I was decent at.
So yeah, I guess, Dale, it's safe to say this isn't a side job for you.
Correct. Yeah, it's been a full-time job the entire time.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And knowing the real estate market and the ups and downs well as being, financial advisors and seeing the stock market ups and downs, I know there's got to be some challenges. So what's most challenging or most rewarding about being a realtor?
All right. So challenging, it's all the different hats you have to wear, right? So, a lot of people will say there's the financial part. You're helping represent somebody in one of the most stressful times, one of the largest purchases or sales that they're ever going to have. And then there's, keeping up on the market stats and, just knowing what's going on. Then there's the fact that it's your own business. So you have to be your own advertiser. And not just advertising, then also like for myself, but what I'm selling, right? The properties that I'm listing and all that type of stuff. So I'd say the challenging part is switching out all the hats and making sure that you wear each one well. At the same time, that's what makes it exciting. It's definitely not a stagnant job. You're not coming in each day doing the exact same thing. You'll be at different places with different projects, every day of the week.
Just to jump in here, where do you see some of the current trends in real estate today?
So the trends,
where are we going?
So it's been a strong seller's market, right? Everybody's heard about how hard it is to purchase a house, the limited inventory, the impact of the rates. And the truth is, it's been a seller's market for quite a while now. We consider anytime the market has less than 6 months worth of inventory, we consider it a seller's market, and anything with over 6 months worth of inventory would be a buyer's market. And, to put that in perspective, what that means is if you had a community that had 12 homes sell in a year, you would need 6 homes on the market to be equal 6 months worth of inventory, right? And that would say, okay, buyers and sellers have an equal amount of power to negotiate and stuff like that. And right now, Bucks County, especially lower Bucks County, like where we're at, so I track the school districts like Council Rock, Pennsbury, Neshaminy, Central Bucks, New Hope, Solberry. Just today, this morning, there's about 1 month's worth of inventory in that pretty large area. So we would need 6 times the amount of homes on the market to balance that, to give people equal power. And this is what's caused, the bidding wars people have heard about, where people are going sometimes crazy numbers over the asking price and doing things you never would have thought to do back in, 2008 or anything like that. Waiving inspections, waiving appraisals. And I don't expect it to change much this year. I think we're still going to, although we might see a slight uptick in the number of homes on the market, it's not going to be enough to substantially change that trend.
So staying with the seller's market, what should sellers focus on to get the best value for their property at this point?
So everybody's looking online, right? If you don't attract someone through what you're putting out on the internet, they're not going to schedule an appointment. So we basically consider the first time they see you on Zillow or any of those websites, that's really your first showing. And it's, can you then attract them through the front door to actually show up? And, I think the important part of doing that is, one, who you hire and what they're going to offer you, what type of services. So staging, huge, absolutely gigantic. The stats have come back that you're going to sell your home about 73% faster than a non-staged home, and from anywhere from 1% to 5% higher in value. Quicker you get an offer, right, the higher and the better the terms are going to be. The longer you're on the market, the more buyers going to expect that they can negotiate. Or on top of that, the staging, that has to then go hand in hand with the professional photography, 3D tours, all those types of things. So I think that's really important on the marketing side. And then, of course, it's establishing the value. So it's, working with a realtor who's going to really be able to show you why they're putting this price on it. So it's not, hey, the next door neighbor sold for $500,000. Let's just put you on at 500 or 510. It's why. Why did they sell for 500? What was their kitchen like? What was their bathroom like? What were their floors like? So you really need to crunch the numbers and figure out, not quite an appraisal, but in a similar fashion, to come up with the value. And if you put all of those together, you should sell your home for top.
In today's market, what advice would you have for people who are looking to invest in the real estate market?
So it's become a lot harder. A lot of people I know that are hoping to invest and might actually consider keeping their first property that they bought and actually buying a new property to move up, because you're never going to get. So if you bought your home 5 years ago, you're probably going to have pretty good numbers, right? We say we're hoping for the 1% more. So if I spent $250,000 on the property, I'd like to rent it out for 1% of that per month. I'd like to get $2,500. With the way that the market's gone, even though rents have gone up, they haven't quite kept pace with prices. So it's going to be very, very difficult to find that in today's market. So again, that's why a lot of people I know are saying, hey, let me keep that first condo or townhome I bought, because I do want to invest, but I'm better off actually using my current money to buy a new home and just renting out the old house. Now, people who are just, hey, I'm not, I don't have that, I'm just looking for, a rental property. I think the big question is going to come down to, are you going to manage it yourself, or are you going to pay someone to do it? And it's not always cheap enough to be able to pay someone to do it for you to cover the cost. So, I know in my experience, I've always tried to make sure I'm making enough money on each property that I can keep it separate from my finances in its own bank account. And after my first year, I shouldn't ever have to put more money into it, right? So if I'm clearing $500 to $1,000 on a property and I put that in the bank for the first year or two, next time it turns over, I then have those funds to pay and to make the repairs instead of it coming out of my pocket. Now, if I go to pay someone to do that, they're going to charge me 1 month's rent to find a renter. They're going to charge me maybe 10% per month, to handle the collecting all the stuff, collecting all the rents and any work that needs to be done. So I'm not a big fan of hiring those companies. I think it puts a little too much strain I think it's something you really want to be able to manage yourself. So my advice to my clients when they do that is, one, learn how to run credit and background checks to make sure you can, find the right tenant yourself so you don't have to pay someone to do it for you. You want to get a really good group of contractors who you know and trust. So like if I have a problem with, at one of my properties and my tenants send me a text message, I'm immediately just texting them back a photo of whatever they sent me along with the person. So whether that's my handyman, my plumber, my electrician, that I trust these people. I know they're going to go over there and take care of it, because it's not, unlike what you guys do with stocks and stuff, there's a lot of time dedicated to running your own rental property, right? So I was trying to tell people, this isn't like investing in stocks. This is going to take a little bit more of your time and effort. So yeah, my advice is usually stick as close to home as possible. You don't want to be driving an hour plus to get to your property. Have it be in an area that you're comfortable going to go pick up your rent. I've had a lot of clients in the past say, hey, we hear Philadelphia is a great place to get that close to that 1%. And my advice is that's fine if you're willing to go down there and collect the rent if it doesn't show up. If you're not, then you should probably stick somewhere closer to home. Somewhere that makes it a little bit more manageable.
That's great. That's great advice, because people often ask to compare investing in local real estate versus investing in the stock market. And we know that investing in real estate is more hands-on.
It is 100%. Yeah.
Awesome. Just to backpedal a little bit there, Dale, when we were talking about the buyers and sellers market and you were saying about the 6 months inventory, I mean, I guess the simple solution would be more people just start selling their house so we have more inventory, right? But
great.
Those people have to move into somewhere, so they got to buy a house, which I assume just cancels it out. So to kind of fix that, what would they need to do? Build more houses, or
building more houses would be great. I think the hard part, especially in our area, is the chances of those homes being affordable is unlikely, right? So, so the people that don't want to sell, when we're talking about like the locked in with the interest rate, is, hey, there's a lot of people that we would expect to downsize at a certain point in time. They've raised their kids. They've had the 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2,500 square foot house. Now you expect them to sell and move, downsize, building over 55. We're not seeing them do that. One, the new over 55 communities are more expensive than their home. Doesn't make sense.
Okay, that makes sense. So people aren't going from the starter home to the, a bigger house, retirement home. They're not doing that whole trend anymore, and it's kind of throwing a wrench into everything.
It is. And then even the ones who said, okay, well, maybe I would, well, I've already paid off my mortgage. So for me to stay here is cost me very little. But now you want me to reinvest this money into a market where the prices are high and the interest rates are high. So we have a lot of people that they're not in a position where they're forced to have to move, right? Like if you're in a 2-bedroom condo and you just had your 3rd kid, you don't care what the interest rate is, you're moving, right? You need that bigger space. But hey, I raised my kids, I love it here, I'm tied into the community here, and I'd like to move to first floor living, but I don't have to. So we're not seeing that part of the market, which would kind of just be like your normal, right? Yeah, you raise your kids 20, 30 years, you move, and then the new family moves in. So we haven't seen as much of that. And unfortunately, the new construction in Bucks County in general doesn't tend to be very affordable. A lot of these builders, they're going to be building $1 billion plus properties in a lot of areas. So it doesn't really help the first-time buyer demographic, which is really what drives the rest of the market anyway.
Okay, that actually brings us right into kind of what I wanted to talk about here, my segment, which is going to be more about people my age, late 20s, early 30s, looking to buy their first home. So what advice would you have, Dale, for people that are trying to buy their first home?
I think this, I just read this the other day, and it really blew my mind. The average age of a first-time home buyer last year was 38 years old. Okay, and that's up from 35 the year before. And I never would have assumed it's obviously a lot later than in previous generations. And so at this point in time, what they're saying is that the average age of household formation last year was 26. But that means just people moving in together, right? Couples, significant others, whatever it is, renting their first apartment together. And it's taken another 12 years. And so it's actually millennials that are buying their first homes and not Gen Z. So Gen Z is more at that, moving, maybe finally moving out, getting an apartment and stuff like that. And so my advice for anybody in the Gen Z era would be, first, just check your finances, set your budget, and figure out how much you can save each month so you can actually put together a deadline of, hey, it's going to take me to this day to save up enough money for this down payment. Check your credit. check your credit, because the difference between a score 740 and up and 740 below, it's going to cost you money. It's going to be a higher interest rate, and over a 30-year loan, that adds up. That's a lot of money that you're really just throwing away, right? There's same house, it's just costing you more money. So that would be my first advice. What we are seeing is we're seeing a lot of people, a lot of families, right? Whether it's parents gifting equity out of their home or gifting down payments and stuff like that to help out. So that's not advice. That's just the reality, of the situation, is that a lot of people, because of the rising cost of everything, everything, it seems like everything's inflated except for people's incomes, right? Everything's gone up, but everybody's making the same amount of money.
That's what I was just gonna say. Do you think the age keeps getting further and further because of inflation and the wages aren't really following it?
100%.
So there's a gap there.
Yeah, 100%. So you might need to have a conversation with family to see if there's a way that they can help. I know people who have maybe done an interest-free loan, stuff like that to help the children out, to get them into their first place. And my next bit of advice on this, though, is that, don't wait any longer than you have to. You might want the single family with the white picket fence. Hey, maybe you need to just get in the market and get a 2-bedroom condo to start. Because the truth is that, prices have been escalating at a very crazy pace. And we expect that to slow down, kind of come back down to this normal, like 3 to 4% per year versus the double digits. But you don't want to sit on the sidelines for 5 years and miss out, right? Because that's $400,000 property today is going to be $480,000, right? At that point in time. And so the quicker you can get in, the better. And just keep in mind, it doesn't have to be your forever home, but making that equity is going to make it much easier to buy that moving house, right?
Right.
How important is it to get to the 20% down to avoid the mortgage insurance?
I don't think it's hugely important. I think that's more like a personal thing, really. I think that's what can you afford. It's obviously never preferred to have to pay mortgage insurance, because you really are, again, just throwing away money. You're the same as paying a higher interest rate, basically. But I'd rather, my first home, I was FHA 3.5% down, right? And, I bought right before the Great Recession. Bought in 06 and 05. But by the time I sold the property, all that, although the price had gone down, by the time I sold it, it come well back up. And, I think for the most part, it's just mostly, if you can get in, you should, and then you wait. So I'd rather be riding the wave up than sitting on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another thing you mentioned, sorry, Riley, real quick. You mentioned FHA, and I've had conversations with people in the past, but there's a common misconception that FHA can only be used for first-time home buyers, and that's not the case, right?
No,
Okay.
It's not. And there's a lot of misconceptions about how difficult the loan is to close. It's definitely not as easy as a conventional, but it's not like it was 30 years ago. They might nitpick a little bit here or there about a few things, but it's definitely not the nightmare people remember it being. But the other part here too is that there's now, so I want to backtrack too. There's a lot of lenders that'll offer you 10% down loans without mortgage insurance now. So there's a lot more product out there than there used to be. And now the FHA, for when I first started 19 years ago, that was the lowest down payment you could make. There's a conventional loan now that goes down to 3%. So it's really, it's important to talk to your lender, because they do have a lot of different options nowadays. And not only that, they are pretty good about staying up to date on, like PHFA sometimes has a first-time buyer credit, or, hey, take this class, we can, shave something off your interest rate. So there's a lot of different products out there.
Awesome. And speaking of interest rates, so as us being in finance, we of course watch the rates all day on the TV screens. And I know other people, my friends and other people I know around town, pay attention to the rates as well. They're all waiting for the Fed to drop their rates. And then I've heard from other people that the mortgage rate doesn't really follow the Fed rate. It follows a different rate. I don't really know too much about it.
They call it.
Yeah, so if you could tell us a little bit more about how the Fed rate drops actually impact mortgage rates, how they correlate.
This is something that I talk to my lenders about all the time, because I honestly, it's above my head, a lot of it. You guys you do probably understand a lot more about those terms. But what it's been explained to me is that, yeah, there is a correlation. It's just not 100%, if that makes sense. So, and at the same time, a lot of times these lenders might be ahead of the game rather than meeting it, on time. So maybe 2 months ago, we saw a pretty big drop in rates. I mean, we got down to around 6%, right? And now they're back up to about 7.25. So they dropped ahead of the Fed rate drop. And when the Fed actually dropped the rates, they actually started creeping back up a bit. And people were confused. Like, well, why is this happening? So I asked my buddy of mine, Mortgage CS in Newtown, local lender, and he said, listen, it's because they already knew this was coming. He's paying so close attention to all this information that they already factored that in because it's a competitive business, right? Everybody wants to offer the best they can get to try to draw on the business. So they're trying to get ahead of it, but then later on, it'll kind of start floating back. But yeah, so it's not perfect.
Yeah, I'm guessing too, if there's a big demand for houses, it would kind of make sense for mortgage companies to keep the rates high because if people are going to buy houses, there's big demand. Why not keep them higher? They're getting higher.
That could be, but I'll tell you, a lot of mortgage companies make a lot of money off of refinances. So one of the things I've always been jealous about with the mortgage guys, because obviously we have a close relationship and I send them business, is, I might find out they took my client and sold him a mortgage 4 times between them. I've only done one deal with my client. The mortgage, 4, because rate coming down. So they're making money with every one. And it was a big part of the business, obviously, before rates started running up a little bit over a year ago. So my guess is they want to offer them the best rate in terms that they can. It is what it is, right? They have to sell it to somebody. They have to, they have to have a bank willing to take that.
Right.
So,
And I guess that's also adding to the inventory situation where a lot of folks refinance down when rates were 2.5%, 3%. So they're not going anywhere. Why
for
would
5 years.
yeah.
Right.
No, I mean,
Interesting.
it was crazy. I had clients who were doctors, which there's a special doctor's loan they were able to get, and they took a 15-year mortgage. So also gets a long rate, but it was the lowest rate I ever saw. It was 1.99%.
Wow.
Would you ever leave?
Why?
Yeah.
But you had to.
Right.
That's great. So Dale, how many times have you heard somebody say rates are too high, wait till rates come down to buy a house?
Yeah. And it's been a tough learning lesson for a lot of buyers because I think a lot of buyers, even going back, let's say 2 years ago, people were like, interest rates are going to fall, market's going to crash. It's going to be like 2008 all over again. And those people are now paying an interest rate that's probably 2% higher. And they're probably purchasing a house that's about 20% more than they could have 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. So it hasn't worked out for anybody I know. And, I think we got so spoiled, right? We got so spoiled. It was the only decade we ever saw an average interest rate under 5%. Every other decade I go back, talking 7, 12 and up. So we're actually, historically, our rates right now are very fair. They're really not bad at all. But it's hard. You grow up, if you've grown up and you've been buying and you're seeing people get 2.5%. It's kind of hard to convince yourself that 7.5 is normal. But I'd be shocked if we ever see 4 again. And I'll be honest with you, like somewhere in the 5s, I think would be very, very.
It's interesting.
I think when the market settles, 6 to 7% is probably where it's going to stay for a while.
Yeah, and that's what I heard too. I heard people saying like possibly low 6, but probably more mid 6 was a lot of the assumptions. So I think, you just kind of have to. So I wouldn't wait because you could be waiting forever. You could literally never have it, right? There's a chance.
Yeah.
So figure out what you can afford, right? Get in. And if it happens, refinance.
Great advice.
Yeah, it's basically the same advice I've been giving people too, that them waiting for rates to go back to 2% that we had in, when was that, 21 is not going to happen again.
You'll never own a home.
No, exactly. The one thing that interests me too is if you go back to when rates were that low, the price of housing. So like a Levittown house, I saw one sell for, I think it was almost 600,000 or 500 and something.
750.
So that was record. Yeah. So
750.
But what's mind-boggling to me is their mortgages are still pretty low compared to the same house for like 400 with a high. But then, so basically my question is, when rates are real low like that and houses are more money, is that a common trend that
So
the price of the house sways with the rates?
So, I mean, all I can say is this, is that, this all started happening because of the crash, right? So we had the Great Recession. We saw values drop by 25%. It was hard to sell real estate. From 2008 till 2012, buyers were nervous and sellers were walking away from their homes, losing their homes. So that all kind of started with, helping the interest rates come down, just trying to inflate the market and give it some buoyancy. And then when COVID hit, we got really low, like crazy low interest rates. And that combined with people being scared to list their homes because I don't know if I'm gonna have a job in 2021. I had no idea what's going on in the world today. I'm not, we thought we wanted to move, we're not gonna do it. So you made money really cheap, but you also made inventory very limited. And that prices up.
Interesting.
You want to wrap it up, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop. Dale, again, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today to do our podcast. Again, for the folks listening, this is Dale Cosack with BHHS Real Estate in Newtown. We'll drop his information below if you need any real estate advice locally in town. And of course, if anyone has any questions about anything we went over today, feel free to give us a call here at GWH Advisors and Accountants. We're always looking to help you with all of your investments, including real estate. So thank you very much. And we will be back with another episode soon.
Thank you, Dale.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Dale.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us this week on the GWH Steps to Success podcast. Make sure to visit gwhadvisors.com where you can subscribe to the show or tune in on iTunes or Spotify so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you hit the thumbs up button. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like this episode, you may want to check out more content available on our website. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode filled with actionable insights and financial wisdom. Until then, this is Chris Cece signing off.